All right, I think we're going to officially begin. So good morning, everyone. Boker Tov, and very, very nice to see everyone this morning. Let's begin with announcing the sponsor for the shir this morning, and it is sponsored Le'iloi Nishmas Miriam Bas Avraham Alav Shalom V'Shem Tov Ben Shlomo Zichrono Livracha, and this is part of a sponsorship for the entire year. So we thank the family. And we pray for an Ilui Neshama to Miriam Bas Avraham. All right, so we have a fascinating topic this morning, and to see the insight of Rav Kook. And let me begin with the following anecdote that will kind of set the stage for our discussion this morning. I was in America for Pesach. I was there a week or two after Pesach, and they had an event for the yard site of Rabbi Soloveitchik. Rabbi Soloveitchik's yard site is over Pesach, the 18th of Nisan, and for Rav Aaron Lichtenstein. On one night, and it was actually the yard site of Rav Aaron Lichtenstein Zatzal, and one night in Englewood, there was a gathering. They had Rosh Yeshiva from YU, they had the president of YU, who was speaking as well at the event. I think it was like 4 Rosh Yeshiva that were speaking, sharing their memories, and I attended the event, and I was surprised by one thing in particular, and that is that there were, I think there were 35 people or 40 people that attended the event, which I thought there would be about 400 people that would attend the event. So I was thinking about that and thinking about why people were not there. I'm sure there are many reasons that one could come up with why there was a small attendance. But one reason that I would suggest is that the idea of a tzaddik and the idea of giving honor and feeling connected to the tzaddik is not something that we necessarily put our emphasis on in our community, or let's say what we would call the YU or the centrist, modern Orthodox community, that idea of a real sense of allegiance and honor and feeling a closeness with the tzaddik, with the Rosh Yeshiva, with the righteous person, is not something where we've placed great emphasis. And I don't know, an event like that in Hasidic circles or maybe in other circles, I think there would be hundreds of people that would come out for a yard site for their major leaders. So that's interesting. I found that very interesting, a little bit disappointing as well. And with that, I want to look at a topic which is a topic of this piece that we're going to be looking at, but actually of the entire chapter. And this chapter in Eretz Chefetz is about the Tzadik, is about the role of the Tzadik, of the righteous person, the righteous individual of the generation. There may be more than just one, and the role of that person, the importance of that individual, and what it means to be a tzaddik, and what it means to connect with the tzaddik. So let's take a look at what Rav Kook writes, and we'll see. I think we'll see something interesting, something that is unique in terms of the way that Rav Kook speaks about the tzaddik. So we're on the first page. It's Perek Yud Aleph. This is Yud Aleph of Eretz Chefetz, and it's the piece which is Gimel, the third piece. 11.3, Hasavlanut. So he begins with a word that we're familiar with. Maybe we need more of this here in Israel today. Savlanut, patience. Hanidreshet ma'od lekibutz organi enoshi. The patience that's needed when you bring a group of people together is something that's critical. Tzricha lemidat hachesed elyona. One needs, or there needs to be an elevated amount or level of kindness, vanavan, humility, apnimit, inner humility, hammamteket et kol hadinim, that brings sweetness to all judgment, ubona et haolam b'shichlulom, and it builds the world to perfection. Now again, this is always, we have to kind of break through the language and understand what Rav Kook is saying, but I think he's saying something relatively simple here, and that is when we bring a group together, when we bring a congregation together, it requires savlanut, it requires chesed, it requires that there isn't so much midat hadin. There has to be more chesed in that environment. What does that mean? It means in a shul setting, in a community setting. So there are going to be people that you like a little bit more than others. those that you find to be more difficult. But how do we work together in a community? How do we work together as a nation? But again, we kind of break it down within a smaller community. How about within a family, right? How do we work together when we are together and we're trying to be together? So the statement that's made here, that Rav Kook says that you need a lot of savlanut, that you need patience with people. You can't be that judgmental. If you're going to be judgmental, you need to be hamimateket kol hadinim. You need a lot of mitikut. You need a lot of sweetness when it comes to judging others. You got to be sweet with others and to see the best in others. And he writes, Al yedei tipucha lemidat hachasidut. And when you move towards this midah of chasidut hagdolah, and you really need to have an elevated level of chasidut, of righteousness, hayotzeit mitoch bina elokit elyona utikufa, that comes from a bina, an insight, which is a godly insight. Utikufa has to be something that's constant. Okay. Now he uses a word here which is chasidut, which means that you need individuals in that community that are going to be, now not everyone is going to be that righteous about those kind of relationships, but you need people like that. You need chasidim, you need saintly people that are part of that community, that elevate that community, and I think suggesting who become role models for the community of how we are to have mercy and sensitivity, and how we learn to work together. And he writes the following, and here we get to the main point in terms of the importance of the Tzadik from the perspective of Rav Kook. Al kain hi tzricha la'amid chasidim gedolim. You need in such a community to produce great saints. You need individuals like this as part of the community. Hamiyuchadim begadlut hadat, people that are unique in their greatness of dat, of insight, intelligence. Umevatzrim et ha'amad haruchani shel klalut ha'umah. And within them, they encompass the spirit of the entire nation, bikirbam pinima. So here I think this is unique to some degree to Rav Kook when he speaks about the tzaddik. The tzaddik is not just a person who cares about his own congregation or his chasidim, but feel the entire nation, that the entire nation are at the heart of the tzaddik, that he's one with the entire people. Okay, good. So he's about to touch on that point, and that is that a lot of the nation isn't necessarily involved, they're not engaged in spiritual things. And that's the reality. And so we need tzaddikim, we need righteous people in order to see the potential in them and to connect them with the nation as a whole. And again, as we've been talking about recently in our shiurim, in our classes, that this is part of what Rav Kook is concerned with in terms of the larger community, and also the larger community that's not necessarily spiritual, religious, in the same way that you have particular aspects of the community who are. So we read on now in Rav Kook. So such a tzaddik, such a chassid needs to be somebody that's connected with the entire people, that feels that they encompass the nation as a whole. And I read on now, this is the third line in the second paragraph here. Heim ha'anashim ha'elyonim ha'halalu. These are people of great ascent. These are great people, yodim. And they know, she'otze ruach ha'umah hu bikirbam. They know that the very essence, the treasure of the nation is within them. Al kain, therefore, einam charedim. Now, charedim here doesn't mean the way that we use it today. They're not afraid, they're not concerned. Ve'enam ba'im lidei yeush, and they don't give up. Al yedei miut hamabua haruchani. If they don't see a great spirituality, a fount of spirituality, shel klalut ha'umah b'hamona. If they're not seeing that the nation as a whole are filled with spirituality, it's not something that concerns them. Why not? Shemitgaled li'itim biglal hatirda shel avodot hamasiyot. Well, again, before he says why we're not concerned, but it only comes out here and there. Shemitgaled li'itim. It only is revealed. And why is it only revealed sporadically? Biglal hatirda shel avodot hamasiyot. Because they're involved. The regular working person is involved. He's getting up in the morning. He's going to his law practice. He's a doctor. He's a psychologist. He's a nurse. She's a nurse. And, they can't be involved in studying all day, and that spirituality may not be present, but the tzaddik knows that. The tzaddik is aware of that. The tzaddik believes in every person in the nation of Israel. And he writes, and here's where he sees the potential, the Tzadik is able to see the potential in OUisrael. Haruchaniyut hachiyuvit atida lihiyot. That spirituality is going to, in the future, it's going to come out. Mitpaleshet be'umah me'ela. It's going to penetrate the nation in just organically, naturally. Alpi segulata pnimit, because the nation has that skula, it has that special quality within them. Ayidei ha'arat ela yichidim. That I think is a key line as well. And how does it come out? How does that spirituality going to reveal itself? Al yidei, through ha'arat, through the light of Eila HaYichidim, these great personalities, these Yichidim, these Chasidim, these Tzadikim, the great rabbinic personalities, great women personalities, spiritual personalities. They believe in the nation, they see the potential of the nation, and with that, eventually they're going to inspire the nation as well. Shehem Shluchei Hatzibur, that these individuals are people that represent the nation, Vehem Nosim Bilvavam, and they carry in their heart, Et Otsar Haruchaniyut, they carry in their heart the spiritual treasure, HaMechayeh Et Kol Ha'am Kulo, that is going to bring to life, that's going to revitalize the entire nation. Okay, so this is Rav Kook speaking about the Tzadik, speaking about the righteous individual, or the tzaddikas. We could say the tzaddik, the tzaddikes. It could be a woman, it could be a man. I'll share the following story, which I think kind of elucidates one of the ideas that he's highlighting, and that is, it actually happened to be over Hanukkah time in Yerushalayim, and Rav Kook received from a community in Eastern Europe the first section of a Sefer Torah, the first klaf of a Sefer Torah. I don't know if you've ever seen that minhag, that sometimes you begin the writing of a Sefer Torah with a klaf, and then the sofer continues that, and then you have the celebration at the end. And they wanted Rav Kook to begin the writing of the Sefer Torah. And with the Sefer Torah, that they also wanted to name the shul after Rav Kook in Eastern Europe. They said, we want to be Hasidim of Rav Kook. We're going to call it the Rav Kook Beit Knesset. And we want you to begin this Sefer Torah. This Sefer Torah will be in your honor. And all of that sounds very, very beautiful. It was very beautiful. Rav Kook wrote back to them that I'm very honored, I'm very touched by your offer, but I really don't want, this is what he writes, says, I don't want to be a Rebbe to Hasidim. I don't want to be a Rebbe to a group, to like a particular congregation or to a Hasidus. I want to be a Rebbe to all of OUisrael. I want all of OUisrael, every member of OUisrael, to feel that I am their rabbi, that they can turn to me as their rabbi, that they can look up to me as their rabbi. And I also want to relate to a congregation, not as a one particular congregation, but as to the nation as a whole. And I think that's a really interesting perspective. You don't have that in the world of Hasidim. You have Lubavitch, you have Chabad, you have Slanim, you have Erlo, whatever it may be, and you have a Rebbe for that group. And that's where, that's where the Rebbe puts his attention, special attention, and that's where the Hasidim also put their special attention towards the Rebbe. So here we have this idea that Rav Kook, and you see it in the words of Rav Kook that we just read, the idea that the Rebbe, the Tzadik, that the Chassid, the person, this great leader, this great personality, should be a person that feels the entire nation, feels that the entire nation is, that they represent every individual, every person in OUisrael.
That's what we need in our chief rabbinate.
That's okay. Yeah, no, it could be. No, we need more of that today. So that's an interesting perspective, and that's the way that Rav Kook is speaking about a tzaddik. I wanted to share one other story just about Rav Kook and the idea of being a tzaddik. So when he was 19 years old, he comes to Volozhin, which was the great yeshiva of the day, where all the great students would attend and study. He studied with the Netziv of Volozhin, considered to be one of the greats of the greats. He writes the Amek Davar. And when he comes to the yeshiva, so he asks the Rosh Yeshiva, the Netziv, if he can put on Rashi Tefillin and Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin. Not everybody had that minhag. There's like a chumrah that you first put on your Rashi Tefillin, then towards the end of davening, you then put on a second pair of Tefillin. Other students did that in the yeshiva, and he said that he could do that. He also then asked the Netziv, could I wear Tefillin all day while I study? In other words, and he said, I'll do it in a, it'll be kind of covered up. I have a sleeve. They wore a little cap. And what?
Both pairs at the same time?
Both pairs. I don't think both pairs at the same time, even though You're right. Some people do that. If you walk in the old city, by the way, there's a yeshiva called Zilberman's. Their custom is to wear tefillin all day, and you see children. I mean, they're not little children; they're bar mitzvah age, high school. That they're walking around the old city wearing tefillin all day, and many of them actually are wearing. I don't know if you ever. I never saw this in my life. 2 pairs of tefillin at the same time. That they're wearing Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam together. So they're interesting. You can see that if you hang around for an hour or two in the Rova, you'll see that. So the Tziv of Volozhin said to him that he said to Rav Kook, again, he's 19 years old. He said, "You can do that. You know, if you like, you can do that." Again, he's asking permission. It wasn't something. There were a whole group of students that then knocked on the door of the Netziv and said that they said to the Netziv, "I don't think that this should be done, that this is proper. There are a lot of very righteous people that are here, righteous students, and they don't do this. And we prefer that you tell Rav Kook not to wear tefillin all day while he's learning." So the Netziv answered the following. He said that yes, there are a lot of very righteous people here, a lot of righteous students. They're tzadikim. But this is what he said. He said, but Rav Kook is the only yashar in the yeshiva. He's the only one who is a yashar. Now that's very interesting, and the question is, what does that mean? By the way, this is a story that was told by Rav Aaron Soloveitchik, and it's in a book. Rav Aaron Soloveitchik shares the story, so it's authentic. The Netziv, and without getting into this, is going to this sidetracks a bit. But the Netziv writes in his introduction to Sefer Breshit that it's called Sefer HaYashar. That's one of the names of the books that Chazal give to the first book of the Torah, based on Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, who are called Yesharim. And Yesharim means, and this is a higher level than a Tzadik. A Yashar is somebody, a Tzadik is somebody, one way of interpreting a Tzadik is a Tzadik, yes, you're a Tzadik, but you're always struggling. In other words, you're a Tzadik because you're able to overcome. Right? In other words, you have, there are Averos out there, and you're able to overcome those Averos, like a Yosef at Tzadik. Right? He was exposed to all these things, but able to overcome. The Yashar is no longer overcoming anything. Right? He is... That's right. Yisrael, very good. Or Zarur Lat Tzadik. That's one level. Actually, Rav Kook comments on that pasuk. Uli Yisrael Leiv Simcha. The Tzadik doesn't have that Simcha. You just have it. That's right. There's a Simcha. That means you're one with God. You've perfected yourself to such a degree that you are Yashar, right? You're just one, right? You're aligned with God. The Tzadik is still, every day has to, struggle to get out of bed in the morning. You're a Tzadik, right? You get to minyan, you daven, but you got to struggle a little bit. The Yashar, you've overcome all of that. So that's what Netziv said about Rav Kook. Now, I just want to, that's a Netziv talking about Rav Kook when he's 18 years old in the yeshiva, just to appreciate Rav Kook, and we talk about a tzaddik, talking about a saintly individual. Okay, so let's analyze for a moment the idea of a tzaddik. On the one hand, the idea of a tzaddik is something that, and we'll touch on this in a moment, that's really, something that the Hasidic world put a lot of emphasis on the tzaddik or on the Rebbe. Right? They put great emphasis on that, the importance of being with the tzaddik and being the presence of the tzaddik and learning from the tzaddik and devekus to the tzaddik. But tzaddik is not only an idea that's found in the Hasidic world, it's something that we say every single day and that we daven for every day. So I want to just highlight that. Look at page 2 for a moment. One medrash just to kind of set the stage, and I thought this was interesting. This is Rabbi Akiva, who makes a statement about a tzaddik, and Rabbi Akiva says that the Jewish people are compared to a bird. Now, I've heard that many, many times. There are many ways of interpreting that, like the dove and a symbol of peace. So look at what Rabbi Akiva says. This is the top of page 2. I'm a Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, who was a great tzaddik. Nimshalu Yisrael la'of. The Jewish people are compared to a bird. In what way? Ma ha'of hazeh eno poreach belo kanafayim. Just as a bird cannot fly without wings. Kach Yisrael ein yecholim la'asot davar chutz mizikneihem. Without the elders, without great rabbis, without tzaddikim, the Jewish people would not survive. We could not fly without them. That's the statement of Rabbi Akiva. Interesting. I never thought about that sort of that symbolism of a bird in that way. But that, says Rabbi Akiva, those are the wings of Am Yisrael. That's how we fly. That's how we find great success in spirituality. Okay. But here I want to kind of bring us to a source that we all say every single day, not on Shabbos, but every day, 6 days a week, and we're praying for tzaddikim. Again, on the one hand, we think, just using that term, it's tzaddik. I don't know what you think of. When I hear that, the first thing I sort of think of the Hasidic world and something a little bit more mystical. And here, every single day, not a day goes by that we're not praying for tzaddikim, for Hasidim, for the Ziknei Amcha Beit Yisrael, and Pleitas Sofrim. These are all terms for the rabbinic leaders, all terms for righteous people. Yes, did you want to, please?
I was just asking, are you equating
Elder, exactly. Elder is right. Elder's a zaken in rabbinic literature doesn't mean it, right, doesn't mean it, very good, right? Doesn't mean, it's not age, it's somebody of great learning. And for us, great learning is always not just that, that academically you're good in learning. It means that you're a person of righteousness. So they're all, I think we can put them all together. What's interesting is that the bracha that we say every day in the Shemona Esrei also kind of brings them all together. Did you want to make a comment, or just stretching? Stretching? Okay, good. All right, so yes, please.
I think that Ziknim
Yeah.
leaders.
Okay, it could be that's more leadership, yes. Yeah, I think that's experience, yeah. I think in this context, certainly in this medrash of Rabbi Akiva, I think when he says Zikneim, I think he's referring to rabbinic leaders. Even the Art Scroll translation has our Torah elders, not just elders, meaning our great Torah personalities.
See that from the Chumash, Moshe Rabbeinu went to church to Shivim Zikanim.
Very good, very good. When we talk about the Chumash itself, Shivim Zikanim, we're also talking about people of great learning, and righteousness, absolutely. So what are we saying every day? By the way, this is a bracha. I don't know if you ever thought about it. I thought about it for many years, and I still continue to think about it. Why do we need a bracha in the Amidah, praying that Hashem gives reward to tzaddikim? Isn't that what Hashem does? Isn't that how it works? In other words, why do we have to daven for that? Why do we have to daven that the tzaddikim should receive their v'tein sachar tov l'chol b'tchim b'eb? Why do we have to daven that they receive reward?
so that they continue to be able to
Okay, good. That's good. I don't know. I always found that. I don't know if I have a perfect answer for that either. I also, and I want to highlight this, of the limited brachot, we're talking about the 18, 19 brachot, of all things that we're praying for. We're praying for refuah and parnasa and for geula and shema kolenu and sim shalom. To make the list, to pray for tzaddikim in this limited group of, which is the essence of tefillah, right? To put tzaddikim, a prayer for tzaddikim and chasidim and ziknei amcha Yisrael, for that to make the list is interesting, or I would say is challenging, right? Of all things to pray for every single day in the Amidah, that this is what we're praying for tzaddikim. What?
We often take them for granted.
Okay, good.
And we need to know that without them, we are.
So very good. I think that's the beginning of an answer. In other words, how essential in other words, how essential the tzaddik is. Yes, how essential are our chasidim and our tzaddikim and our righteous ones, how essential they are for our lives and for the life of the Jewish people. And yes, we are going to daven for them every day. They are essential, and we don't necessarily appreciate that. Yes, please.
because there are role models.
They are absolutely.
We despair.
Very good, very good. So again, this is a chiddush to me. Again, I don't know if you ever thought about it, like how al tzaddikim and this prayer for the tzaddikim is why it's so critical, why it's so important, and the kavanah that we should have when we're saying it as well. What is it that we should be thinking about as we're reciting this bracha? Yes.
The tefillah itself.
Yeah.
It says Aleinu, and then at the end it says Simchalkenu Mahem.
Very good.
We want to be
Part of that.
Very good. Well, first of all, I think that's an excellent point. What does that mean? I'll just highlight that for a moment. V'sim chalkenu imahem le'olam. We want our portion to be with them. We want to be part. Now, I would say there's two ways of interpreting that. We want to be like the schar that we should, because that's what we're talking about here. V'tein sachar tov l'chol habotchim b'shechah ben b'simcha kenu imahem. That we should be a part of that reward. Okay, whatever. That's one way of looking at it. Or v'simcha kenu imahem, that our lives should be part of their. In other words, our chelik should be part of their chelik. Our lives should be connected to these individuals. V'simcha kenu. Not talking about the schar, but just talking about that our chelek, that our lives should be lives that are interconnected with tzadikim, with chasidim. It's interesting, when I grew up, there were no tzadikim books. Like there were no books about tzadikim. One of the first that came out was a Tzadik in Our Time, I think in the 70s. But we didn't write, and Art Scroll has, I don't know, like 150 books today about tzadik. Just reading about, I think it's like 3 or 4 just on Rav Chaim Kanievsky. They just came out, another one, Kloisenberger Rabbi. Like, it's become a very important part of what we're reading. And I think that's, from Art Scroll's perspective, or our Jewish community, we see that how important it is, that this is part of our learning. It's part of what we think about. It's part of what we're exposed to. It's what inspires us. And that could be V'sim Chalkeinu Mahem. Yes, we want to be a part of that. Not every community has that. And I hate to go back to the way that I opened. Here we had a night about tzadikim, and to learn about tzadikim, and nobody came. Nobody came to hear about our tzadikim. So just interesting, yes. Right, very good. Yes, right. Absolutely. That was Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. He Zatzal. So he taught that. Yes, that's a very important idea as well. Okay, let's share a couple of. So first of all, just this idea of tzadikim. So here you have Rabbi Twersky, Rabbi Dr. Abraham Twersky. So he has the following comment on this prayer of tzadikim, of why we have this in the Amidah. Why do we have to pray to God? Why do we pray that God reward the righteous? Is it not self-evident? Right, the question that I asked before, I always ask that question. Right? Isn't it self-evident that God will give the righteous their due? Why do we have to daven for them? So he quotes a Hasidic interpretation. Rabbi Moshe Lev Sassow explained that this prayer is to remind us that there are virtuous people who are so selfless that they never pray for their own needs. We therefore intercede for them. In other words, a tzaddik who cares about Am Yisrael is thinking about Am Yisrael day and night and not thinking about themselves. And therefore that's this Hasidic interpretation, because they're never davening for their own needs and their concerns. We need to daven on their behalf. And he writes, Rabbi Twersky, how refreshing it is to know that our sages had to formulate this prayer, because there are people on this earth who do not think at all of their own needs and are concerned only with their needs and wants of others. Since this prayer has been preserved today, we have every right to believe that even today such wonderful people exist. The sages tell us that in each generation there are at least 36 truly righteous people. In an age where there's so much self-centeredness and self-indulgence, it is refreshing to know this. But more important, if this degree of selflessness is attainable even today, why should we all not aspire to it? Place our share, this is his interpretation of V'sein Chalkeinu, V'sim Chalkeinu Mahem, place our share, says the prayer, that we become like them. So here, that's a beautiful kavanah as well. We want to let us be like tzaddikim. We're praying for the tzaddikim that are not praying for themselves, that we're interceding on their behalf, and we want to chelik. We should be like that as well, that we should be less, and this is very much, what's that? Yeah, I was thinking about that phrase also. V'lo nevosh, we should not be embarrassed, ki v'cha batachnu, because in you we have bitachon, we have faith. It's not easy. Not sure. It's a good question. It's amazing how we say these words every day, and yet they're challenging. Yeah, that's a challenging line. I think it means lo nevosh in the sense that we're connected to the tzaddik, that we shouldn't be embarrassed, that we're living a life that's disconnected to appreciating all of these personalities. You know, who are the Pleitas of Freim? That Rabbi Soloveitchik, he has a beautiful idea that again, you have these different terms that are used here: the Tzadik, the Chassid, the Zaken, which we were talking about before. Who's the Pleta Sofreim? So Rabbi Soloveitchik says in every generation you have people. A Pleta means somebody from the previous generation, and to appreciate those individuals, the Pleta Sofreim. Sofreim means describes, doesn't mean literally describes, but rabbis, great individuals that we have that were, a survivor, right? Those elders that saw a different world, to appreciate them as well. So that's yes.
People tend to identify with what we would refer to as contemporary.
Okay, good.
Get there and see
Right.
what we should have done.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay, let's look at. I want to share the following passage from the Gemara, which is about a tzaddik, about the life, and really about the passing of a tzaddik, and actually two comments that are made, one by Rabbi Soloveitchik and one which is made by Rav Kook on the same piece of Gemara. So this is a Gemara that's found in Brachos Mem Gimel Amud Aleph, and it tells the following story. It's a story about that Rav passes away. And I'll read to you the story. You have it in translation as well. Ki nach nafshei de Rav, when Rav passed away, again a great tzaddik, zaken of the generation. Azlu talmida basrei. So they followed him. They went for the burial, and they escorted the body for the burial. Ki hadre, as they were coming back from the burial, amrei nezil v'necha lachma anahar danek. So I guess they didn't eat all morning, and they said, now that we're done with the burial, let's sit down for a moment and let's have something to eat. Necha lachma, lechem, let's have some bread. Basar de karche, yasve, v'kami ba'ilahu. So after they broke bread and they ate, they had the following question. Hasebu davka tanan, do we have to have eaten all together? Aval yashvu lav, but if we sat and we did not all sit together, then we cannot bench together. O dilma kevan to amri, nezel v'nechel rifta, b'duchta planisa, being that we said we're going to all eat together, ki hesebu dami, lo have biyadayu. So they asked the following question. They all sat down to eat. It's very simple. And they said, can we all bench together? Now, what's the problem? The problem is, okay, it's a technical issue here, that did they actually have the meal together, or did everyone kind of like find a place to eat? Right, this one sat on the stone over there, this is under a tree. They were all separate. Can you all bench? Did we eat together, or did we not eat together? If we ate together, we can say Rabosai Nevarech, we can have a mizumin. If not, then we can't bench. That's the question that they asked afterwards. So Kam Rav, they entertained that question. They threw out the question to everyone. Kam Rav Ada bar Ava, Ahadar Kare Lechure. So Rav Ada bar Ava, one of the rabbis that was there, he stood up, he took his garment that he was wearing, and he turned it around, and Ukara Kriya Achrina, and he tore a second time. Now, it sounds like that all the Talmidim, because this was their Rebbe, that they did Kriya, and now he got up and he turned his shirt a bit, and he made another Kriya, another tear in the shirt. And he, what? Yes. Well, look at what he says. So Amar, he said the following, Nach nafshe de Rav, our Rabbi Rav passed away, Ubirchat mizona lo gamrinan. And we don't even know the law of benching. We never asked him this question. A lifetime of learning with him and a simple question of how to bench, we never asked him. So Rabbi Soloveitchik comments, and he says that this is a part of the human condition, part of the reality of life, and a sadness that when people pass away, there are times, and he says the Gemara is highlighting that we don't always take advantage of those opportunities. I was a rabbi for many years, and I would often hear,
When we realize the loss, it's too late.
it's too late. I would hear people say at a eulogy, I never told my mother that I loved her. I never told my father. I never said those words. Right? I never had that discussion that I wanted to have. I was never able to say how much I appreciated them in life. So that's Rabbi Soloveitchik's comment on this Gemara. The Gemara is teaching us here in this episode, this story of that they never even asked them the simplest question. Somehow they never got around to doing that, and that's the tragedy of the human condition, that we don't do that, and it's a lesson. It's a reminder that we need to do that. So that is one. That's Rabbi Soloveitchik's comment. Now Rav Kook's comment on the Gemara, And Rav Kook is going to comment on the idea of the Tzadik, of the righteous individual. And here, let's share it together in the Hebrew. This is from Einayah. This is the top of page 3. And by the way, there's a translation here of Einayah. There's a rabbi here in Jerusalem. He teaches in the Grus Kollel and in Eretz Chemda. His name is Rabbi Man. And he has translated all of Einayah. If you're interested in studying Einayah, so you have the translation below. If you want to have the additional translation in English. But let's just look at the first 2 lines, the way the Rav Kook interprets this Gemara. Hefseid hamagia, this is, he quotes the Gemara, that's on the top of page 3, the right side, and then his commentaries with that word hefseid. So again, the Gemara is in the bold, and then the word hefseid is the beginning of his commentary. Hefseid hamagia le'olam besilo katzadik hu kaful. Now what he's commenting on is the fact that he tore his garment 2 times. And in that, he says symbolically, there are 2 great losses whenever a tzaddik leaves this world. Hefseid hamagia la'olam besiluk hatzadik, that the great loss that comes when a tzaddik leaves the world, hu kaful, it's a double loss. Ha'echad mitzad haskula shebiyot ha'ish hakadosh be'olam be'chreach yimshach al yado shleimut lekrovim ulerchokim v'zot haskula hi na'le me'od. So what's the first aspect? We can translate it. Mitzad sigula, that there's a special, a very unique characteristic. Shebiyot ha'ish hakadosh ba'olam, the fact that this person, this holy person, is in the world. Behechrech, it flows from that person. It must flow. Yimshach al yado shleimut, that there's a wholeness. Lekrovim ulerchokim. Whether you're close to the tzaddik, whether you know him or not, the fact that a tzaddik is alive and in this world, that there's a hashpa, that there's a blessing that comes to the world, the fact that the tzaddik is here. V'zot haskula hi na'ale ma'od. That's a very high, and I would say na'ale here also means that it's beyond us to some degree to grasp what that means. But it's tzaddik that lives, like we said, the 36 tzaddikim, the Lamed Vavniks, that the world exists because of them. We don't even know who they are. But the fact that they're in our world, that they're living in this world, that they bring a certain blessing to this world. The world couldn't exist without them. That's one. V'ashenit mitzad hato'elet shemekablim betalmudo v'tzidkotav. And then there are things that one receives directly from them. In other words, if you're a Talmud of them, or if they're giving Piskei Halacha, or if you're reading their Divrei Torah, or if you're reading their Lumdas. In other words, there's something that you receive directly from them. So that, says Rav Kook, are the 2 tears, the 2 kriyas that are done by in this Gemara. One represents, yes, practically what one gains, the ramifications, that one feels, that each of us and as a community. But then there's more of a mystical or a metaphysical idea, a spiritual idea, that the tzaddik, the greatness of the tzaddik, even if we can't grasp it totally, but that the tzaddik in the generation, what that person brings to the generation, and to appreciate that. And maybe that's part of the bracha that we're praying before, ala tzaddikim v'la chasidim, that to have them, that they should be well, that they should receive reward, that they should be healthy, they should be able to have the strength to do what they're doing in each generation, that's critical. Okay, 2 other points that I'll share. Yes, please.
Would they receive good reward they're doing all the
Right. Well, that question was raised before. What do we need to? What's the davening for reward? They're going to receive it anyways.
So who can understand
I think you're right, and I think that's part of what Rav Kook, when he says it's a skula, which is na'aleh. The word skula, by the way, already means it's something that's a bit beyond us, and na'aleh. So yes. So there's
That's part of the answer to the
Yeah.
question. Part of it. And once they're gone,
I think you're right. It's beautifully said, and I think that's what Gemara and Brachos that we just saw a moment ago. That's the lesson. To appreciate them when they're alive. That's what happened. They couldn't answer that question. We didn't appreciate our Rebbe enough. We need to appreciate them when they're alive. And again, the importance of that value in Jewish community and in Jewish life. Appreciating your rabbi, the rabbi of your shul, great rabbis of the generation, and that's a very, very important value. Not every community has that, and maybe it's something that we need to work on, our community. Yes?
I think that speaks to the overall purpose of davening, which is to strengthen
Yeah.
ourselves.
Very good, very good. Good point.
It doesn't
Very good.
us.
Rav Kook writes that many times. He writes, it's not about God. It's not about changing God's mind. Everything that we're doing is that it's supposed to uplift who we are. It's to ennoble who we are. It's to teach us. So absolutely, that Rabbi Soloveitchik, Rav Kook, they stress that point when it comes to davening. It's not about changing God's mind. It's about changing your mind and your heart. Yes, Annette.
I think that we today see this amazing phenomenon of kind of have an impact on our lives.
Very good, yes.
I mean, it wasn't something I grew up seeing.
I think you're right, and that's why I'm highlighting. It's not something I really grew up with this value, and I'm even wondering if this value is as strong as it should be in our community. I'm kind of putting that out there for a discussion as well. Yes.
If I could just read what you said before, it's which I could have told him, tell him now while he's still with you.
Correct.
All that you
Correct.
did for me, I appreciate it.
Absolutely, beautiful, beautiful. That's how Rabbi Soloveitchik. That was the lesson that he took from that Gemara. So let me just highlight two other sources as we're coming to a close. One we're not going to read through right now. If you like, you can read through it on your own. This is the Kedushas Levi, Rav Levi Yitzchak Bar Ditchev. It's really just, I wanted to share just a classic source in terms of how in the Hasidic world, how the Tzadik, how the Rabbi plays such an important role, and to appreciate that and the way that they influence the generation, the way they impact the generation. That's that source number 3. Source number 4, we come back to Rav Kook. This is a piece in Orot Torah. And I'll just read to you one line from Rav Kook. He says, "Lemusar nimratz v'gadol tzrichim chachmei Eretz Yisrael." He says something which is kind of startling. He says, we need to give a lot of musar to the rabbis of Eretz Yisrael, to the chachamim of Eretz Yisrael. Tochecha gedola. They deserve a lot of tochacha. Anachnu chayavim leochiach otam. We have to give them a lot of tochacha. Now, what in the world is Rav Kook referring to? What kind of tochacha did they deserve? So this is what he says. It's not what you think. He says they deserve a lot of tochacha because they don't have enough confidence in themselves. That the chachamim of Eretz Yisrael have so much to give, and he believes, again, this is Rav Kook, class of Rav Kook, as we're coming back to the land of Israel, the spiritual power of those that are studying Torah, and especially the chacham Eretz Yisrael, is something that's going to outshine those that are outside the land of Israel. And he says, usually we give tochacha because people are arrogant and there's too much ego. But he says, I have to give just the opposite tochacha to the chacham of Eretz Yisrael. That they need to have more ego, they need to have more confidence, and they have so much to give. It's interesting, I listened to a talk not that long ago from Rabbi Yonah Rees. He's the Av Bezdin of the Bezdin of America. He lives in Chicago. He's one of the outstanding Talmidei Chachamim. He's a Dayan. He's the head Dayan. And he said in the early years when he was working in Dayanis in Bezdin, about 20, 30 years ago, so whenever they had questions, so it was really the Gedolim of America that they were turning to. You had Rav Moshe Feinstein, Rav Soloveitchik, and others that were in America. But he said today, like 20, 30 years later, whenever there are difficult shilas, all the calls are going to Eretz Yisrael today. All the great chachamim are here in Israel that are dealing with the most intricate issue. The Gaonim, the greatest minds and the greatest decisive Jewish law, this is what he said, are in Eretz Yisrael. All the questions are going to Israel today. So interesting, Rav Kook is writing this, 1910, 1920, as we're just coming into Eretz Yisrael, and he says, the Chachamim, the great rabbis here, have so much to give. There's so much power, spiritual strength that they have, and the confidence that they should have in themselves. And I think it's something that has unfolded. All right, let me conclude with the following. This is actually found. This is the last page. This is for one line, and I just want to share a couple of insights or stories actually to close. This is from a sefer called Mo'adei Haraya, which are a collection of teachings from Rav Moshe Tzvi Neria about the life of Rav Kook and about the holidays. It's a translation, actually, of the book. It's not fully translated, but this is in the section of Shavuos, by the way. So Shavuos, there's a great yard site. Anybody know? There's a yard site on Shavuos. The yard site of the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov passed away on Shavuos. So for Hasidim, it also has like that a great Tzadik who passes away, and the significance of that as well. And so in the section about Shavuos,
Also today,
who's today? Of Zvil, okay, of Hasidic Rebbe, good. So this is the line of the Baal Shem Tov that's quoted. It's said in the name of the Baal Shem Tov that telling stories about tzaddikim, this is the bottom of page 4, the last source. Telling stories of tzaddikim is like studying the Meiser Merkava, the works of the chariot. What is that? That's the most intense, the most complex. You have to be 40 years old, even just to, and you have to know all of Shas, everything to study the Meiser Merkava, the deepest of the Kabbalistic secrets. But the Baal Shem Tov says a story about a tzaddik, that's even greater. That's even deeper than studying the Meiser Merkava. And what do you mean by that? I'm not sure exactly what he meant by that, but I think what he means by that in terms of the spiritual impact of hearing stories, of being inspired by stories of the life of tzaddikim, is something that's very, very, very important, something that really penetrates to the heart of a Jew. And that's something that Hasidim, they took that became a very, very important part of their Farbrengens, of their tishes, of when they would come together. It wasn't just to study a text, it was to tell stories as well. Shalashudis, Malava Malka, gatherings, that storytelling was very important. We see the Baal Shem Tov made that statement that there's nothing like that. So I'll just share 3 short stories about tzaddikim. The tzaddikim that I want to talk about are the tzaddikim of the life of Rav Kook. You have Rav Kook himself as a great tzaddik. His sort of the inner circle of Rav Kook were all tzaddikim, the way that they lived their life. Rabbi Charlap, who was a Rav here in Shari Tzedek, Shari Chesed, thank you, was a great tzaddik. You have the Nazir of Yerushalayim, Rav David Cohen, who was also a close confidant. And you have Rav Aryeh Levin. Now, I spoke about before is the books, that one of the very first books that came out in English, which is a must-read, is a tzaddik in our time. So he had a very close relationship with Rav Kook. He was a very, very outstanding, remarkable individual in his sidkus. So I just want to share with you 3 stories. One, just as an opener, Rav Kook often would take walks in the afternoon, and Rav Aryeh Levin would join him for those walks together. So this is one of the famous stories. They were walking together, and they were talking, and I imagine, again, it wasn't just schmoozing. I imagine it was on a very, very high level. And at some point, Rav Aryeh Levin, as he's walking, plucks a leaf from a tree. And Rav Kook turns to him, and he's like astonished. He's like, how could you do that? He said, my entire life, I've been so careful not to take anything from this world, not to detach anything from this world. He quotes a medrash that in every blade of grass, in every leaf, that there's a malach that says, grow to that leaf or to that grass. And Rav Aryeh Levin said at that moment he recognized something about Rav Kook and about his own life in terms of sensitivity not only to other human beings but to the world around us and to God's creations. And he said that was something that impacted him for the rest of his life. Not on Shabbos, no, not Shabbos. He wasn't Machal Shabbos, no, just during the week. We know that Rav Aryeh Levin, one of the things that he did every Shabbos, he would go to the prison here, which is here in Yerushalayim. He lived in Nachlaot. He would walk every Shabbos. He would daven with them, and he had a very close relationship with those that were in prison. Many of them that were fighting for the lechi and for what? Etzel as well. Yes, and so there was a fellow who was getting out of prison. And he asked Rav Aryeh Levin, he said, if I could spend one night, I'm going to make my way up north, back to my family, but if I could spend one night in your home. And of course, that was, Rav Aryeh Levin. He had very little. He had a tiny little home in Nachlaot. It's still there today. I think on a tour you could still see where he lived, just a bed and just the very basic necessities. And he had this fellow over for the night. When they woke up in the morning, he and his wife, so they noticed that the very little that they had, but his silver Kiddush cup and that the candlesticks were taken, that they were gone, and this fellow was gone as well. So Rav Aryeh Levin turned to his wife, and they really turned to one another, and they said, let's not allow this to impact our Hachnasas Orchim. They were going to make sure, even though this happened, that we're going to continue to have anyone who needs a place in our home. So even if we have difficulties sometimes with people that are staying with us, so Rav Aryeh Levin teaches us the sensitivity. Yes, please. One other story, one last story, we'll end with this. So Rav Ari Levin, by the way, his life, he never had like a illustrious or an honor position per se. He wasn't like a Rosh Yeshiva. He worked in an elementary school. He was like a Mashgiach Ruchani in the Eitz Chaim school. That's what he did. He didn't even really teach much there. He was really just there for the boys and speaking to the boys. And there was a boy that he had as a student that he happened to see. He was walking in the alleys of Nachlaot. You could still walk there and envision what it was like for Ari Levin to be there, right by Machane Yehuda. And he saw this boy. He had grown up. He was 20 years old at that point. He saw him from down the alley, and he noticed that the boy kind of like ran away from Rav Ari Levin as he was making his way. So Rav Ari Levin goes running after this fellow, and he catches up with this boy. He knew him as a boy. He's now 20 years old. And he said, "Did I do anything wrong that you don't want to see me?" So the boy said, "I was a student of yours. I was in the yeshiva in Eitz Chaim, but I'm no longer religious today, and I'm not wearing a kippah on my head. And I didn't want you to see that I no longer wear a kippah." So Rav Ari Levin he was a very short man. So he said, when I see a person, I just see the heart of a person. I don't see the head of a person. And I only see your heart. I only see the love that you have. And I remember the kind of student that you were. I don't make any judgment. And he was holding his hand the way the Rav Aryeh would hold and caress somebody in his hands. And the boy said afterwards in the Sefer Tzadik in our time that he put his kippah back on. That was a moment in his life. So this is all about tzaddikim. Rav Kook says we have to appreciate and we daven every day for our tzaddikim. We should be zocheh to look up to them, be inspired. If we can find tzaddikim in our lives to connect to, even better. Yasher Koach, yes, we'll take a comment.
We took a tremendous tour with Rabbi.
Yes, very good. Yes. It's a must tour, by the way. If he ever does it, and I did it also, I went on it twice. Rabbi Benji Levin, the grandson of Rav Ari Levin, lives here in Yerushalayim, and he gives a tour, and he tells the stories, and you go to his house. It's an amazing, amazing tour. Look out for that. Really highly recommend it. Everyone should be well. Kol Tuv. Everyone have a good week. We'll have